Hey, welcome to another episode of Simon Paschal Says with Simon Paschal PLLC. I'm Paul Simon. I'm joined here by Dustin Paschal, and we're going to talk today about something if you're an HR professional you never deal with, but employee complaints. And so, Dustin, I'm just going to kind of open it up just generally, just kind of, what should employers do or consider when they receive an employee complaint?
Yeah, so let's start with actually backing up a little bit before the complaint comes in. Every employer should have a complaint procedure, grievance type of policy, because when it comes to kind of defenses in lawsuits and litigation, the law says as long as you have policies in place and you follow them, and the employee fails to take advantage of them, that gives you some defenses that you can use. So every employer should have some policies in place with respect to how to handle employee complaints. And I always recommend that those be as broad as possible, meaning, we ideally want to say if you've got an employee issue, you should complain to your manager first, and then if that doesn't work, to HR, and then if that doesn't work, to some other manager. But we always want to have some language in there that says, but you know what, you can skip anyone at any time and complain to any member of management or complain to HR. We just, at the end of the day, want to make it clear to employees, get us the complaint one way or the other. So kind of starting before the complaint, that's the best thing to do first, and make sure it's clear to employees. Once you receive that complaint, really you need to investigate. Every investigation is going to be a little bit different. When we say investigation, sometimes it may be just a very simple going and talking to somebody. If it's an easy issue that doesn't involve a lot of people, that could be the end of it. So that's still an investigation. Or you may have something where you've got to talk to 3, 4, 5, 6 different people, look at documents, review files, look at some camera footage, who knows. But you need to make sure you do a thorough investigation looking into the complaint.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I guess perhaps define what is a complaint. We have those situations where employee comes to, and again, especially if we're going to say you can go to any management level person, perhaps management doesn't understand it is a complaint. I'm not complaining to you, I just want to share some concerns.
Sure.
So how do you define what a complaint is when we're talking about this?
Yeah, at the end of the day, complaint is, you've got the regular, what we all think about, just employees complaining about anything. It's too hot, it's too cold, so-and-so heats their lunch up in the microwave and leaves it messy. There's complaints about everything. If it's not a protected category complaint, meaning it's not about race, religion, age, disability, gender, something along those lines, something that's protected under the law, then it's not something that we have to worry about from a legal perspective. From a workplace perspective, we still want to look into those. We still want to address them. We still want to make sure that we are making employees feel like they can bring things to us and that we're resolving them, but there's not a legal concern. So that's kind of the difference between those two. But also, sometimes you might get an employee that comes to you and says, hey, so-and-so made a comment to me that made me feel uncomfortable. It was, I thought they were kind of coming on to me. I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I don't want to be uncomfortable with that person. So I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to know about it. As an employer, you still have to investigate that. That's, we call that the notice complaint. I just want to put you on notice. You still got to look into it, because later what's going to happen is the employee is going to say, I made a complaint, you never did anything about it, and now I suffered further adverse action. So even with those notice complaints, we want to look into them. When we're dealing with complaints, we always want to tell the complaining party, and anyone we're dealing with, we can keep this as confidential as possible, but it can't be 100% confidential, because you may have to release some things that's going to identify who made the complaint or who's a witness. And furthermore, under the National Labor Relations Act, it's seen as almost a violation of protected concerted activity to tell people to keep it fully confidential and not talk about it, because employees are allowed to talk about their workplace conditions. So we always want to say keep it as confidential as possible. But you want to investigate it, look into it, and really a big thing that I'll kind of close with when it comes to investigations and employee complaints is close the loop. More often than not, an employee complains, we investigate, we take action, we think we're done, but we never actually went back to the complaining employee and said, hey, here's what happened, and they aren't sure whether it was actually ever resolved. When I say close the loop, I don't mean you got to go tell them every single detail, but you at least need to tell them, I looked into it, I conducted an investigation, we found some issues, we took appropriate action, or we didn't find any issues, but we're going to keep an eye on it moving forward. But close that loop so that employees know. And at the end of the day, as long as you're taking those steps from a legal perspective, you're going to be protected. And then just from a workplace morale, culture standpoint, your employees are at least going to feel like they can bring issues forward and that you're looking into them.
And then I guess one last question. When we're dealing with complaints, obviously we have the situation of the fear of the complainant being retaliated against, and I think vice versa, that someone who participates in the investigation, something adverse may happen to them. How do you suggest employers kind of address those concerns?
Yeah, I think employers should always tell anyone that's involved in an investigation, whether it's the complaining party, the party being complained about, a witness, you should always remind them you should not be and cannot be retaliating against anyone in the workplace as a result of their participation in this complaint process, and you cannot be retaliated against. And then particularly for the complaining party or perhaps witnesses, tell them if you feel you're being retaliated against, you need to come to me immediately and tell me so that I can take action and resolve that, because more often than not, it's not the complaint or the initial issue that gets an employer, it's the after effects and potential retaliation.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. So that concludes another episode of Simon Paschal Says. We hope that you tune in next time.